Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Kelsey McGuire, CGO of Shardeum, and I'll give myself a little introduction here. I've been in the space like Web3 since 2018. I joined Consensus back then, have had the privilege of working with a lot of great people over the years. After spending some time at Cello and CoinFund, I've been at Shardium for the past year and a half or so, and really happy to share a little bit of my journey and some of what I've been thinking about in the space recently. And so, welcome to my little conversation with you all called Human Perspectives on Decentralization. So starting off, like what's the point of all of this, especially with a kind of lofty title like that? It's easy to kind of wonder what that even means. So what we're going to get into is, with everything going on in our extremely exciting industry, like really, why does decentralization matter? And what's the whole human element when it comes into play here? So, we build for humans. Tech is for humans, but sometimes we forget that. It's easy to get stuck focusing on our lofty goals with our project, our next update or release, or the market conditions, since it has been a bit of a roller coaster over the years. These are all extremely important and things, of course, we need to be focusing on and thinking about. But what we do here at Chartium and in Web3 is much, much bigger than that. Your users are people, your builders are people, and that's our essential North Star. We all know what decentralization means on the technical side, and it's so important. Incredibly essential things like security, decentralization leads to more secure projects, enhanced privacy. We've all gotten kind of sick of our data being stolen and sold and shared, and just I feel like every other day there's another data leak of some sort using our current systems and Web 2. And we want enhanced privacy overall, and that's just to name a few on the more technical side of things. But there's so much more to all of this. Decentralization on the human side means repeating fewer of the same mistakes from our legacy systems. That means a little more autonomy, less risk of control by a single entity, which has led to some challenges and problems as we've seen over the years. It means building more useful technology. I mean, like we want to build things that actually work and perform for people. This more useful technology is something where you have more control over your own assets and you can make those decisions yourself. And global communities are better able to contribute, since some regions are a little bit more cut off from our global system right now. And I feel like Web3 and decentralization from a human perspective is really seeking to solve and alleviate some of those pain points. Building on that, it's focused on meeting people where they are, whether it's offering educational materials in different languages. I mean, Shardium has a great community effort where individuals can translate different pieces in their local languages, and there's different types of incentives there. This is really important. Not everyone speaks English, and if you're hoping to really build a truly global community, you really need to take that into account and start to tackle some of the challenges that comes with that. And it's also focused on fostering local community efforts. Like, how are you really supporting these individuals outside of where your main group of, colleagues or employees are? And really, what are they doing? What are you doing to incent them and help support them? And what resources and educational materials are you providing? So a big part of all of this, as you're kind of getting the gist of, falls on your marketing, communications, and brand strategy. Um, and I think this is a part that's been getting a lot more recognition and traction over the past few years in Web3. I think early on it was a little easier to set this part of the project aside and focus on it later. But I definitely think that building this into what you're doing from the start will really serve you so much better down the line as your project matures. So we're going to look a little bit at exactly what that looks like from this specific perspective. It means understanding the journey. And we hear a lot about user journeys, community journeys, your personal journey in Web3. So really what that means from my perspective, if you're looking at, building out your Web3 project, or really even outside of Web3, a lot of these ideas work well. It's understanding who you want to engage with. We throw around a lot, the target audience, who's your core demographic, your community, the personas, all of that. But it really boils down to understanding who you want to engage with and outlining a profile that includes their motivations. What do they actually, really care about? Like, what are you doing for them? The pain points and those kind of challenges that they're facing, and really how your project solves those problems. How are you making their lives even a tiny bit better? Because that's the key part here to understanding who these individuals are, who these groups are, and really how you can connect with them as you're building a more global, decentralized community. When you think about trying to accomplish something like this, you can really start to consider, like, how do we, build surveys? How are we asking the community and getting this types of information? So it's really important just to figure out where you can reach these individuals and start asking questions. These different types of interviews, we've worked on through different projects I've worked with in the past include, having people volunteering, or maybe they're incented, and designing really well thought out questions so you can understand exactly where they're coming from and how you might want to evolve your brand and marketing and positioning to better suit their needs and really reach them where they are and contribute to their level of understanding. It's also really important here. People and individuals, they do not need to talk to you. So make sure that they feel valued for their time and that you're really able to make them feel like either the incentive was worth it, the time with you is worth it. Um, Really building that into your strategy is important, because you do want to come from a place of appreciation and not assuming that they'll just jump in and talk to you without any sort of, extra reward or incentive. Another really important part that aligns with all of this is making sure you're creating for your audience, not at them. I think that it's easy to really fall into a pattern of creating and putting things out that feel like you're just going into a room and shouting something out, not, too different from what, what I'm doing here. But, I think it's just, you want to position things that help individuals understand how it directly impacts them, using what you've learned from those interviews and surveys to tell your story through the lens of who you want to engage with, like through the lens of how you're making their lives a little bit better or solving problems. Let's just not share facts and features. Let's add context around why this is actually valuable for your community. For example, do you have a new exciting partnership to share? Let them know why this is exciting. Like, why does it make their lives better? Why does it impact them, rather than just sharing the two names? And that's a really great jumping off point for starting to reframe how you communicate and really start to refocus on, and understand the lens of how you want to communicate to your community. So an important piece of all of this, of course, is designing your entire process from awareness to action. And what that means is, when you think about your overall go-to-market strategy, and this is all through the context of that global decentralized community, really wanting to understand how to bring in different groups to engage with your project so you are building a decentralized future for yourself and for others, is starting with the attract phase. Like, right off the bat, people aren't necessarily going to know who you are, especially if you're a new project, and especially if you haven't been present in that region before. So the attract phase means getting the project name in front of as many individuals from the groups and regions you've outlined as possible to start a series of touch points. And a touch point is them just seeing your name, even if it's a passing interaction, even if they don't remember it right off the bat. It usually takes 5 to 8 touch points before someone takes action. That action meaning a sign up, a website view, a follow on your social channels, any of those types of activities. So you really want to start getting out there and having these types of really casual interactions. They can be a little bit difficult to quantify at this phase because you are just getting in front of people. So you know what you're doing, but you don't know the results yet because the individuals that you're hoping to get in front of aren't necessarily taking action. But what you can start to track is a percentage increase of newsletter signups from a specific region. Again, this will take some time, but it's always important to have specific metrics in mind when you're thinking about building out a more global community. You can track the number of podcasts, press mentions, speaking engagements that your sort of core thought leaders in your project have. This is an important one because you'll start to see these directly correlating with individuals down the line visiting your website, signing up, following your social channels, which is a really exciting thing to see. And it's just one of the many things that feed into sort of your overall community growth. The next phase really is building momentum. So you have this like kind of attract awareness phase. You've gotten in front of your core community a number of times. People are kind of looking at you and trying to understand what's going on. So this is the time you build the relationships. So some of the things you look at here are understanding, the percentage increase in searches. Are folks Googling you? Are they trying to figure out where you are, who you are? This is when, people are starting to take a little bit more action, which is really what you do want to see. You can sometimes include a hedge metric here so you can understand how your project is performing relative to some of your competitors. You're like, hey, I feel like I've gone down a little bit in searches this month, but you can use some tools to understand, have your competitors also gone down, or are they still going up, and therefore sort of almost beating you in the game of building this more global decentralized community. I mean, I'm of the mindset that there's still a lot of room for a lot of different projects, but it is important to know where you stand in this entire journey. And then the final phase in this little process is the launch phase. Like, this is your big moment. Maybe you're going to mainnet. There's something huge happening. You have a community with you. They're engaged. And this is when you really want to look out for, pieces of press coverage. This is when you get into content performance and all of those really important metrics that are more relevant once you've built some of these relationships and you have a big moment to share in your project's journey. And we'll get into a little bit more of what that looks like from a content perspective in just a minute. So here we are. We're going to get into a little bit more of the specifics when it comes to marketing. So I know we've had a lot of sort of broad ideas around what this can mean, but when it comes down to it, I think it's great to break things into really clear, straightforward buckets when you think about building this kind of decentralized community. Your regional strategy is, where do you need to focus? Where are you kind of falling behind in terms of potential market share? Like, which groups do you need to engage with, and understanding sort of that region? Do you have that language content that I mentioned earlier, and all of those important pieces? Really digging into and being realistic with yourself. Do you have the ability to translate to local languages? Will your community maybe jump in and help you with this? Those are all things to think about at this phase. For content, it can follow a similar kind of phase trajectory like we just went over. So this is your opportunity to educate and collaborate by designing a content strategy that follows that journey. From broader Web3 education for those earlier phases, so individuals can understand that you're in the space, you have perspectives, you're providing value, to pieces that are more kind of tailored to why your project specifically is interesting and how you're solving core problems, to finally, in that last phase, tutorials and how-tos, because people are then with you and they want to understand specifically what they can do and how they can interact with you. And then, of course, the core of all like Web3 marketing is community. So community is at the heart of everything we do here at Shardeum, and creating opportunities to gather in person and online is key. This can take the form of a combination of meetups, your presence at conferences, participating in events such as this, and just really making sure that you are providing resources to the community, you're providing opportunities to come together, you're providing those materials that individuals need to engage with in person and online. And it's just that kind of core combination of different elements that will really, really help boost your efforts here. Equally important, we have communications. We've mentioned press quite a little bit already, and build those relationships early. Because again, like there's global different press outlets. There's some that sort of tend to reach everywhere, and there's regional and more kind of localized. So focus on building those relationships, and constantly spamming individuals is not the name of the game here. I know it's easy to get very enthusiastic and want to really like get into it, reach out all the time, but really try to focus just like you're doing with your marketing to your communities. Constantly seek to add value. Like, are you kind of observing certain market trends and have a perspective because this could be useful for a reporter? Do you have someone you can introduce them to for a story? And maybe the story won't mention your project at all, but build those relationships in good faith and seek to add value. And coming from that perspective will really help change the dynamic for the better, and is something I absolutely recommend. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, do not spam the media, members of the press, because no one really likes to be spammed. And I've heard a lot of stories from individuals who receive spam emails and just constant updates that aren't of value. And it results in kind of a very poor relationship with the individuals that you should be prioritizing. Next is positioning. So this is understanding where you are in the ecosystem and where you want to be, so you can carve out some thought leadership areas. And this directly connects with sort of your press outreach as well. Like understanding, hey, like I'm an L1 and I want to be seen as an expert in scalability, for example, and really carving out, your piece in the ecosystem to be the person that, members of the press, the media, but also your community can reach out to you if they have questions about different ways to scale or anything in that realm. And that's just a broad example, but a lot of times figuring out based on your project and what you're working on, those couple of areas will really, really help you in the long run. And of course, your different channels that you're leveraging. Your social channels support all of the above and can be a very helpful place for members of the press to see where you stand on key industry topics. And last but not least, brand and your visual identity. You'll see that that's something that we've really focused on, and that's something that our community has also weighed in on quite a lot, which we're very grateful for. Really dig in and think about what your identity says about you. Is your identity kind of global feeling, or is it highly region specific? Because that will stand in your way if you are really working towards a more decentralized project. Is it engaging? Is it cold? Does it align with your voice and what you're saying? It should be very much, in line with your project and what you're doing. And all of these visual cues should be, exciting to your community and recognizable after a while, and be sort of your trademark, from kind of the colors to any characters that you create. Like we have our Shardosaurs, and all of that exciting stuff. And this is a really great opportunity for your community to jump in and help to shape your future. And so what does that look like at Shardium? We are not a security. We really focus in on utility, and we focus intensely on community through our global proof of community series. We really try to listen to our community, and like I said earlier, sort of meet them where they are through information sharing, the educational materials, our presentations, and kind of public facing town halls. And we are getting to see some of the exciting results of that. So this sort of process and really does have a positive impact, because we can see it. We had over 480,000 users engaging with phase one of our test net. We're building even more momentum as we reach mainnet. So please do join us on that journey and follow along. We're at Shardeum on Twitter, shardeum.org, our website, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or I guess on Twitter, although not quite as present there, at Hey McGuire. And thank you so much.